Welcome to the HR Kyle podcast, your go-to source for insightful discussions on leadership, job searching, and all things human resources. I'm your host, HR Kyle, and each week we dive deep into topics relevant to professionals seeking to elevate their careers and organizations. Whether you're a seasoned leader, a job seeker navigating the ever-changing landscape of employment, or an enthusiast looking to stay ahead of the curve, this is the podcast for you. Join me as we explore practical strategies, share expert insights, and engage in meaningful conversations that empower you to succeed in today's dynamic workplace. So, adjust your headphones and let's dive in. Hello and welcome to another episode of the HR Kyle podcast. I'm your host, HR Kyle. And we've got yet another exciting edition for you today. We're going to be talking about entrepreneurship and more specifically, taking that leap of faith to go out on your own. So we're going to approach this topic from a couple of different ways. One, in segment one, Becki and I are going to discuss this topic from our perspective, lessons we've learned throughout our lives, and certainly this recent leap of faith with HR Kyle. And then in segment two, we're going to have a guest join us. He's an extremely successful entrepreneur, and he will share his story, lessons learned, and some advice along the way as well. So we've got yet another jam-packed episode for you. But before we get into that, we do need to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Are you stuck in a job you hate? Dreaming of a career that excites you? It's time to turn those dreams into reality with Get the Job You Love by Kyle Patrick Smith, also known as HR Kyle. Discover proven strategies to land your dream job, master interviews, and stand out from the crowd. Packed with expert advice and practical tips, Get the Job You Love is your ultimate guide to career success. Available now on Amazon and other online retailers. Don't wait. Start your journey to a fulfilling career today. Get the job you love, because you deserve a job you love.
And we're back. And again, I'm your host, HR Kyle, on the HR Kyle podcast. And as we've been doing for a little bit of a stretch now, we're going to welcome HR Kyle Becki back into the studio. She'll be handling segment one yet again. HR Kyle Becki, welcome back.
Hi, Kyle. It's great to be here. And I love this topic since we just kind of jumped into this ourselves. So this is a great topic today. Yeah,
it's definitely timely. And I know there are a lot of people out there listening that are considering this or maybe early on in their journey as well. So, Becki, I'm going to turn the floor over to you and let you run segment one.
Okay. 4 questions for you today. So let's kind of just start out some of the common fears. What did you fear about starting your own business, and how did you reframe any of those fears so you could take that first step?
Well, honestly, I think part of it is, and I don't know if I necessarily experienced this per se, but there's a fear of failure to some level or of another. And it's not so much failure like going bankrupt and all that. It's more a failure of putting your name out there that you started a business and you're pursuing this and it just doesn't work out for one reason or another. And you've got that dark cloud then hanging over you that you're someone that tried to start a business and you failed at it. I think there are a few people that fall into that category. I think the other part is too that, so many of us are afraid to go into business because it always involves selling. There's just no way around it. It's one thing that runs throughout any business person's daily routine almost is there's always going to be selling. You're always going to be selling what it is you do or what it is you produce. And a lot of people aren't comfortable with that. They don't like to sell. However, when you really look into it, we're salespeople in general. So many parts of our lives require us to sell who we are, what we're about, and what we do. Yep. But I think those are a couple of the biggest things, just that threat to ego, that threat to your reputation, that fear of selling, that lack of desire to selling. And I think the other thing is they're not 100% sure. This classic, oh my gosh, I always forget the term, imposter syndrome. So I think so many people suffer from that, yeah, I'm good enough to work for someone else and do this task, but I don't know if I'm good enough to open it out into the marketplace and do it for just anybody that comes along. And I think that's definitely a very common misconception, because if one employer is going to pay you to do what it is you're good at, then that tells you it's marketable in the marketplace, that it has value throughout the marketplace. So to me, those are a few of the things that really stand out.
Right. And I think with our company that you really focus on something that's unique, that it's not out there very much. And it's not a small business from many places, and it's just unique. We talk about all the time.
Well, and because I think there's a need for it. I know there's a need for it. And for us, I think the biggest thing is getting the word out there to let people know, hey, we're here and we can do this for you. And we offer these, like you say, very unique services and a very unique offering that you may see from much larger companies, but you don't see from companies of our size.
Right. Exactly. Well, kind of segueing into that, how can somebody identify those unique skills or passions and that they can turn into that successful business?
Well, I think it goes back to the things that I talk about in my book. Get the job you love, because being your own boss is a job. I mean, that's one option that you can pursue as a career option is being your own boss. I think you've got to take a step back first and ask yourself, what do I really like to do? What is something that would not feel like work if I were doing it on a day in, day out basis? And then begin to formulate from there, how can that be offered to people in the marketplace where they will see value in me doing that versus them doing it themselves or getting it from someone else? And I think that's the question really starts is, do you want to work for yourself? Do you want to take that lead and rely solely on yourself to deliver results? And if so, what is that? What is that thing that you really enjoy doing, that you're really good at? Again, that someone would pay you to do rather than them do it themselves.
Yeah, those are great points. So what are some of those mindset shifts that are essential for transitioning that employee to an entrepreneur? I mean, I know, we had a plan, but a lot of people don't, and they don't even really know how to start. So how would you suggest that they start those shifts today? Start thinking about that.
Well, I think in whatever you do, you've got to begin to think that activity doesn't equal results. That's the first thing. Results equal results. So many times we think, especially in jobs, I'm busy, I'm doing this and that. But are you really? Are you generating results? Are you doing things that impact the bottom line? So that's the first thing. There's busy and then there's delivering results. I think the second thing that you have to begin to realize is time truly is money and you don't get it back. And there are only so many hours in a day that you have to work with. And in your business, you've only got so many hours in a day to be productive and to generate results. And you've got to be focused on that. So there can't be a lot of wasted time, wasted energy, wasted effort. And you've got to do a calculation sometimes to say, does it make more sense for me to do this or have someone else do this? Maybe it's some freelance work and you can have some people do some freelance work for you that maybe you're not good at or it's going to take you longer. So it really is those two things. One, generate results. Don't just generate activity. And two, spend your time wisely because time now is really money.
Right. So before I go into the last question, can you kind of tell your path, the path that you took when you started and how you got to the point where you are now?
Well, let me go way back. As a child, I was an entrepreneur. I was always working to make money because I was poor. We were poor. I did not get toys and all these other things on a regular basis. 2 times a year it happened, birthday and Christmas. Otherwise, I wasn't getting those things. So I tried to develop ways to make my own money in order to get the things that I wanted, like toys and so on. So I would have my little businesses that I would run. I used to buy bicycles and refurbish them. And I used to sell candy door to door. And I used to do gardening work for elderly people and so on. So I did those things during money when I was this little boy. And then, fast forward to now, I worked in corporate America for a number of years in human resources. And I just made the decision that I would be better served helping companies, and plural, get better at HR and leadership and motivating their employees and getting the best out of people and so on. in this role versus working for one company over a period of time and trying to impact that environment against a lot of different challenges. And I just think I'm better served, and I know that I am, in the role that I'm doing now.
So you started with your podcast, and then we moved into our offices, and then we started actually where you're working out of your office, and to start, you were working a full-time job while going there in the evenings. So there are other practical steps that you could recommend to people to take this first leap to start the process?
Well, obviously with me, I didn't just say, oh, I'm quitting my job and I'm going at this full throttle. One, financially, that didn't make sense. Secondly, it just didn't make sense in where I was at that point in time. I'd made a commitment to a company. I wanted to feel out and fulfill that full commitment. So for me, it made sense to go this route. For some people, what they're attempting to do, the only way they can go at it is quit their job and start at it. So it does depend on the situation a little bit. But I would say if you have the luxury to keep your job and try to build your business, I like that idea best because then you've got something to fall back on. And that's not a failures mentality or whatever. I think in business, you always should be working on your plan B, C, D, E, F, G anyways. And so one of those is right when you're getting started, have some plan B, C, D, and E. One of those is keeping the job that you have until you just can't keep it anymore.
Right. So what I'd heard today's conversation, three things: passion, unique skills, and hard work. And that is what can get you to that entrepreneurial stage where you might want to be.
I think absolutely. I think the other one is just being fearless. I think there has to be a certain level of fearlessness that goes into this. And hey, you might fail, you might not. Keep at it. You know, I don't think failure any days. I always just think, how do I need to adjust my plan? What else do I need to do? What other directions do I need to pursue? That's all I'm ever thinking about.
Right. And I don't think I've ever heard the word failure since we started this. We just realized that there are other opportunities. A lot of times it's pointed us in different directions. So yeah, I think that's a good one too, just being fearless.
Yeah. Well, failure's not an option. It just isn't.
No. Well, thank you, Kyle. Again, great conversation. Really enjoyed this topic.
Nice
Look
job.
Forward to next week.
Nice job co-hosting as always. Appreciate that, Becki. And gang, thank you for tuning into segment 1. As I said, we've got a great segment 2 scheduled for you. We've got a guest who is pretty darn good at building businesses. He's been very successful. He's going to share his story along with some advice and guidance. So stay tuned. After this break, we'll be right back. Greetings, I'm Kyle Smith, and I'm here to offer you a speaking experience that goes beyond the ordinary. With a rich background in leadership, HR, and personal development, I bring a unique blend of expertise and passion to every presentation. Whether it's leadership unleashed, well-being at work, or career mastery, I delve into topics that empower individuals and organizations to reach their fullest potential. What sets me apart? Proven expertise, an engaging delivery style, and actionable insights that drive positive change. But here's the kicker. I don't just offer a one-size-fits-all approach. I customize my content to meet the specific needs and goals of your event. So let's elevate your event together. Contact me now to reserve your date and unlock the full potential of your audience and organization. Don't miss out on the opportunity to inspire greatness. Visit hrkyle.com today. Are you a business owner looking to build a thriving team? Or perhaps a job seeker on a quest for your dream career? Look no further than HR Kyle. HR Kyle is your trusted partner for all things human resources. We're not just about services, we're about success. For businesses, HR Kyle offers tailored HR solutions from talent acquisition to compliance support. We're here to help your team flourish. And for the job seekers, HR Kyle provides personalized career guidance and direction that only a seasoned HR professional can offer. We'll help you find that perfect job match. Don't settle for less. Choose HR Kyle and unlock success today. Visit us at www.hrkyle.com. HR Kyle unlocking potential, empowering careers, transforming business. Hello and welcome back to the HR Kyle podcast. Again, I'm your host, HR Kyle. I hope you enjoyed that brief break. And now we're heading into segment 2 of this episode. And the theme of this episode is about entrepreneurship and more importantly, the power of taking that leap to go out on your own. And we're fortunate today that we've got Lane Kawaoka. And Lane was previously an engineer. And I know I've got a few of those people that are listening out there. But Lane took the leap a few years ago to go out on his own. He's formed his own company. He's very big in the real estate market. I could talk about an intro for a long period of time, but I'm going to let Lane talk a little bit more about himself. And with that, Lane, welcome to the HR Kyle podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Aloha, everybody.
Great to have you. Well, Lane, as I mentioned, there's a lot to say about you and your background and where you are now, and that opens up our first question. Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so today we operate $2 billion of real estate, over 10,000 units. We've done over 60, 70 projects. We bring in investors to partner with us, but I think that's just the vanity metrics, right? I mean, I think what we're going to talk about today, I kind of started on this linear path. My parents taught me to go to school, study hard, invest in the 401k, buy a house to live in. And that was kind of my path. I studied hard to get an engineering degree and just started to work for the man. And again, just blindly doing what I was told. I bought a house to live in, but that was where my path kind of changed a little bit there. I started to rent it out and I got this taste of cash flow and I realized, wow, if I just did this a handful of more times, I'd be able to quit my job, certainly make more cash flow. And that was kind of the start of it all. That was back in 2009, I bought that first property. And then 2015, I had 11 rentals, and that was kind of when things really took off.
Interesting. So, Lane, you went against the curve here. Hold on, we're not supposed to do that. There's a certain way things are done here, and we all thought that your parents had the right message. I'm a little confused now.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of lucky. I never listened to a thing my parents taught me, and luckily they did the traditional investment route and the 401k route. But yeah, I mean, even from the start, I can remember when I was a kid, I asked like, well, why don't we rent out our house and make some money? If you keep complaining all the time that we're kind of living paycheck to paycheck. And they always said, well, you don't want to rent out your house because the tenants will screw up your property. Obviously learned that for myself, that was somewhat true. But, I think I kind of found my way into this world of entrepreneurship by accident to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
And like real estate is probably one of the easiest businesses to get into. I mean, you're basically renting out commodities of empty boxes for people to live in. And so, I mean, it's nothing like I think a lot of your folks you'll interact with. I mean, those very operational intensive businesses where real estate's pretty simple. That said, is a lot of dollars.
Well, and Lane, I think another message in your story is that you can build this up. And my hunch is that you stayed with your quote unquote day job for a period of time as you build up the real estate side of your business. Am I right on that?
Yeah. So, I mean, kind of dating myself, 2009, I bought my first rental, and then 2015 I had 11 rentals. But with the rentals at a few $100s of profit at the end of every month, that's not too much to me, right? Like, I mean, it's maybe a few $1,000s of passive cash flow a month, which is great, right? I'm not going to complain, but that's not enough for any person to retire. And with 11 rentals, I had maybe an eviction or two every month, some kind of big headache that happened. I have professional property management doing my dirty work, as I don't recommend anybody do property management on their own. Just pay somebody to do it for you, even if it is 10% of your monthly rents. But, all during this time, I was working my day job and doing this quietly on the side. And, through when I first started to work, I worked at a Fortune 50 company. A lot of, didn't like the quality of life because as most people will know with being a young professional too, you work really hard for not too much pay and, cause you're in those starting years of your career. But that was kind of where as I got more and more rental properties, more income from that side, I started to move more towards, government sector jobs that are a lot more crews and gave me some free time on my hand to expand the real estate business that even at that time, 2015 was pretty passive at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I would have been doing that if I didn't make the podcast that I have and build the community. I probably would still be working at some engineering job, just kind of hiding out, laying low, driving Mercedes to work every day.
Well, that leads well into my next question, Lane. And what were some of the bigger challenges that you faced really in the early stages of starting this business that we're talking about? And what was your process in overcoming those?
I think a lot of it was like just mindset and not having the right people around me. I mean, just specifically for like real estate investing or investing in general, a lot of people in the cubicle next to me and my friends and family, they were all into traditional investing, 401ks, maxing that out, getting the company max, nothing to the realm of buying a rental property and growing what we call alternative investments, which are essentially what the wealthy invest in. Um, so I think a lot of it was like trying to disseminate what were the normal financial dogma out there and what are the people who are wealthy do. And it wasn't until, I had 11 rental properties, started to pay to get into masterminds and groups where I got around other high net worth accredited investors and started to realize that there is a set of strategies, including investing in syndication deals, private placements, doing privatized banking with life insurance, and all these tax strategies that the real estate opened up by getting you a lot of passive losses to drive down your adjusted gross income, all legally. And I didn't realize this stuff was out there. It was sort of under my nose the entire time. This is obviously what I write about in my new book, The Wealth Elevator. But this is, I think a lot of people are totally unaware with this. And, like people just on the investing side, when I first started, I didn't know anything about rent to value ratios or how to underwrite a rental property. And, like I said, my parents told me don't do it because your tenants will screw up your property and you'll get sued or something like that will happen. Not the case. A lot of that's just, fearful, low probability things of happening. But, just kind of getting out of that worker mentality and getting more into the entrepreneur side, which I admit, in some cases there's risk, but, in all many things, if you take a little bit more risk, and most times you get an outside return of reward.
Well, Lane, it sounds like too that your philosophy and your approach is don't focus on the worst case scenario because you're working with a lot of probabilities. And as we both know, basic math tells us that the worst case scenario is the least likely to happen.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, with my 11 rental properties, I had, like I said, an eviction or two every year. 1 out of 3 or 1 out of 4 of those evictions ended up to be like a $10,000-$20,000 repair bill because the tenant would just absolutely like just vandalize the property. So it's a crapshoot with that, and that happened to me a few times with as many evictions as I had. Which, you have that many rental properties, it's going to come up. But the more properties you get, the more you're able to make profit and be able to withstand that when one of those oopsies happens. And I think this is kind of where it totally made sense to me to get more involved into larger apartment deals and diversify my risks across hundreds and hundreds of apartment units while partnering with other investors And in that view, also being a passive LP partner, instead of being the person who signed on the debt, recourse in my name as the person borrowing the money from the bank, and also the person on the line for the liability in case somebody slip, trip, or falls. As a passive investor, you're not the one signing on the debt. It doesn't even show up on your credit record,
Right.
in fact. And also, you're just a passive investor, no different than you investing in AT&T, for example.
Right.
I'm sure AT&T gets sued multiple times a day. You're a shareholder, we don't care.
That's right. Well, Lane, you've hinted at this a little bit, this next question, but I'll let you dive into a little bit further. At a point, again, as we talked earlier, you were doing your business operations kind of as a side operation, and there was a point in time when you made that transition to leave that day job and make this entrepreneurship, this business that you've built, your primary. What did you do to prepare for that transition? Because I think a lot of people are scared of that transition, because having that day job is always providing that soft landing. It's that scaffolding around them that limits their risks. So what did you do to make that transition to being a full-time business owner?
Yeah, a few things. First, I had cash reserves. I think I had maybe couple 100,000 of reserves just in case the business didn't fly and I could, didn't have to go finding a W-2 day job for a couple of years without going through that. So I think that allows you to not make stupid decisions where you have to find a client in 3 months, for example. Secondly, was I prepared from a professional level? All through my career, working for a Fortune 50 company and then working through a city, a state, federal government, I'd worked for big companies and seen how business is done. And a lot of these experiences helped me run my own business, even though it's, way smaller from a like just dollars perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that helped me for sure. And also, being a manager and leader of people. And as I always say, tell my folks, you take a job to be able to screw up on somebody else's dime, right? I was working as an engineer for probably more than a decade at that point, messing up on somebody else's dime. So I was ready. I didn't know everything, but I definitely had learned my style and cut my teeth as a leader. And I think that's important for a lot of people who, unfortunately, a lot of entrepreneurs out there are just people who can't get jobs. You see it. I think you and I just added each other on LinkedIn, right? A lot of
Yeah.
people on LinkedIn these days that call themselves entrepreneurs, that's just 2024 speak for can't find a job, bro. Unemployable, right? I'm not saying that college education is everything, but that gets you in the door in a lot of professional areas, at least from a resume perspective. And I know we have a lot of business owners and with kids. A lot of our investors run their own businesses, and something I've kind of picked up is there's a common practice never to allow your kid to take over the family business
Yeah.
unless they've worked for another major company and gotten promoted 2 times.
Amen.
So I certainly had checked that box unknowingly, just looking back. So I know I'll probably adopt that one for my own, kids and legacy. But I was, you never know what you're ready for until you do it at the same time. But for me, it was very logical transition because at that time I think 2020, we had gone over $1 billion of assets under ownership. So I think I quit my day job around 2018.
Okay.
So I think at that point we must have been, we definitely were moving. We must have brought in, maybe we're at like $250 million, $250 million of assets. So I mean, I gotta admit, it was a little irresponsible in the early days when I was working my day job and then I had my other computer on my desk to,
Yep.
do the real estate stuff. Because by no means was I a passive investor at that point. I was a
Right.
real estate syndicator and deal sponsor, general partner. So, I mean, I just, at some point for myself, I was like, this is just irresponsible. I need to quit the day job, even though the day job was easy money. But I urge people to kind of take, I'm not one for like, if you don't have a profit and loss, a profitable company, and, keep the day job
Yeah.
because that day job is going to give you money. And a lot of times for businesses in the beginning stages, you're cash strapped.
Yep.
And the second reason is if you have a day job, you're probably having to focus time and energy on keeping employed.
Yep.
And that keeps you pretty lean in terms of your time resources. So you start to develop very good habits because you have to. If not, you'll get fired from your job.
Yep.
But by sort of like starting out that way, you start to build systems and processes, and that's what businesses are at the end of the day.
Yep.
Lean systems, and a lot of times lack of resources like time, because you're trying to not from getting fired, is a great incubator
Yep.
for that to start off that way. So, I mean, to me, that's ideal. I don't know what the threshold is. You're making 50 grand of revenue or $500,000 of revenue, but whatever that threshold is, once, if you cross it, yeah, just quit the day job and at that point you unleash the beast.
Awesome. Lane, I'm living that right now, what you're describing. I've got a day job and then I've got the HR Kyle operation. So I'm living exactly what you're describing, and I'm thinking about that threshold here. So I get it 100%. In the last few minutes, or last minute and a half that we have, Lane, looking back on your journey again at this point, what advice would you give to someone who's considering starting their own business, but they're just a little bit hesitant, they're a little bit unsure about taking that leap?
I'm a big numbers guy. Like I said, it comes down to your revenue and your profitability. Because the different advice is going to be for somebody who's broke and has just an idea and a pipe dream
Mm-hmm.
versus somebody with a profitable company. So, I mean, I'm big on these non-blanket statement advice. Like if people check out my book, The Wealth Elevator, I have like a table in there, and the way it's organized is based on your net worth and your income. You look what floor you're on, and you apply those set of strategies.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody is to a point where they have a working business, you've created something that's profitable. So at that point, you dial up the time and you quit your day job, and then in theory, you should just amplify or magnify that positive, maybe not growth, but that positive difference between your profit and your expenses. And in theory, you should grow from there. But if you're not there yet, or it's just a negligible amount of profit, maybe your idea isn't that great. Maybe you're just not that good at what you're doing, man. That's fine. I mean, it took me a long time. Bought my first rental in 2009, had 11 in 2015, and then finally quitting in 2018. But that was after I think we didn't really talk about it too much, but what really put me on the map was I started a podcast in 2016,
You
a
said
time
that.
when not many people started podcasts and built a good community back then. And we started to do deals with our listeners back then. And if I wouldn't have done that, then none of this would have ever happened. And I think that's part of business that they don't teach, or a lot of times, I don't listen to anything once they start talking about Steve Jobs or Elon Musk. To
Yeah.
me, those guys have nothing to do with me or anybody listening.
Right.
That's a self-selecting bias.
Yep.
I want to know what somebody who's dumber and has less advantageous attributes than I do. What did they do?
Yep.
And a lot of times, you just have to slow grow at this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like take YouTube. I think a lot of people, they use YouTube for marketing these days. Everybody talks about getting that video viral and
Yeah.
exploding to 10,000 subscribers and 100,000 subscribers. in reality, most people who have built sustaining businesses or marketing from that YouTube channel, they just consistently put out one good video every single week, and they get half a dozen subscribers for a long, long time.
Yep. Well, folks, we've been talking to Lane Kawaoka, and Lane's the Wealth Elevator. That's the name of his book. One of the reasons that I was drawn to have Lane on and talk with us tonight is he's not just someone who talks about this or he's written about it. Lane actually lived this, what he's talking about. He continues to live it, and he's sharing his advice at that point. And any sort of a person that's in that situation of expertise, I'm always drawn to. So that's why we had Lane on tonight. Lane, I definitely want to thank you for this and taking this small bit of time to share your wisdom with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Kyle. Appreciate it.
Great having you. And folks, thank you for tuning in to yet another episode of the HR Kyle podcast. If you're not following us, first off, I'm a little confused as to why you wouldn't. But if you're not, I would encourage you to please do that. That's the best way to keep track of our episodes and what we've got coming on next. So until next time, stay focused, stay grounded, and of course, stay tuned. Well, that's a wrap for today's episode of the HR Kyle podcast. We hope you found our discussion valuable and filled with insights that you can apply in your professional journey. Whether you're a business leader aiming to foster a thriving workplace or a job seeker looking to carve out your own path, remember that HR Kyle is the compass that can guide you towards success. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share it with your network. We're committed to being your trusted source for HR wisdom, and we look forward to having you back with us for our next episode. Remember, in the world of HR and professional growth, there's always room for progress. Be sure to visit our website at hrkyle.com. That's hrkyle.com to learn more about how we can help you meet your business and professional goals. So until next time, this is HR Kyle signing off. Stay motivated, stay informed, and keep reaching for those career goals. Music provided by bensound.com. That's bensound.com.